They claimed the land by right of discovery. It was their intention to see it turned into a hub for Indigenous services in Seattle, a community center that could provide education, healthcare, poverty relief, and cultural programming in a more organized fashion and at a larger scale than was capable with the current crisis-driven Indian Center. They hadn't expected much resistance, but they got it. That weekend, a reserve company of military police was on duty, and within a few minutes after the fort was breached, around 40 military police descended on the activists with billy clubs and tear gas. The takeover turned into a brawl, and the activists were pushed out of the fort. They set up a camp outside the main gate in Resurrection City, where they stayed for the next 4 weeks, making several other takeover attempts. The incident made international news. Celebrities like Dick Gregory and Jane Fonda, whose names should be familiar if you've watched my Fish Wars video, came to lend their support. The occupation ended in April, but the wrangling over the fort's fate continued for another 2 years. Eventually, a deal was reached between the federal government, the City of Seattle, and the United Indians of All Tribes Foundation. The fort will be sold to Seattle for the creation of Discovery Park, and the foundation will lease 16 acres of the park to the Daybreak Star Indian Cultural Center. Opened in 1976, Daybreak Star is an important nexus of Seattle's Indigenous community today. It offers Head Start classes, foster care advocacy, culturally appropriate outpatient therapy, outpatient substance abuse treatment, GED courses, housing referrals, and hosts an art market and annual powwow. The UIATF and the Women's Service League are both still active today, but in the years since the occupation, they've been joined by a whole host of organizations serving Seattle's 12,000 Indigenous residents. There's the Seattle Indian Health Board, offering culturally sensitive modern healthcare as well as traditional medicine, the Chief Seattle Club, serving homeless natives, especially in downtown, Queer Oyate, providing HIV and AIDS treatment, and many more. Thanks to the tireless efforts of past Indigenous leaders and the ongoing work of their successors, being Indigenous in Seattle is not so difficult as it once was. Despite the gains made to re-indigenize Seattle and make it more hospitable to Native people, there is still much work to be done. Little demonstrates that better than what happened here at the intersection of Bourne and Howell on August 30th, 2010. That day, an Indigenous elder named John T. Williams was crossing the street. He was an 8th-generation BT Dot carver who could often be seen carving at Victor Steinbrook Park just north of Pikes Place Market. That afternoon at 4:15 p.m., Williams crossed the street here, carrying a block of wood and his unopened carving knife. He passed in front of the patrol car of a Seattle police officer, Ian Burke. Burke got out of his car, sidearm drawn, and yelled at Williams to drop the knife, before shooting him 4 times, hitting him in the side and back. The incident was caught on Burke's dash cam. Burke began shooting 4.7 seconds after exiting his vehicle. Williams died soon after. Burke would later claim that Williams was coming towards him with the knife open in an aggressive manner, a claim that is refuted by the pattern of Williams' injuries and by multiple eyewitness accounts of the incident. Oh, and there's one more thing. John Williams was deaf. Indigenous, Black, and Latino people all across the United States are all too familiar with police brutality. Hundreds took to the streets in the following days calling for Burke's arrest. An internal SPD review of the incident found Burke's use of deadly force to be unjustified and premature, but he was not charged with any crime and was allowed to resign 6 months later. A decision that was seen widely as a miscarriage of justice and sparked a fresh round of protests. The murder and its ensuing controversy became a sort of catalyst. It galvanized a growing police accountability movement, which has been pretty strong in Seattle ever since. Williams' murder was by no means an isolated incident. It was merely one in a pattern of racism, poor judgment, and excessive force that had grown to attract the attention of even the Federal Department of Justice. The DOJ launched an investigation, and in 2012 it concluded that the Seattle Police Department engaged in a, quote, pattern or practice of excessive force. They placed the SPD under a consent decree aimed at reforming its policies and policing culture that has only been lifted in March of 2023, though they are still under a compliance agreement, basically a pared-down version of a consent decree. Only time will tell if meaningful change has been achieved in Seattle's law enforcement culture. Editing me here. It was only the day after filming this that the news broke that a university student, Donna Bakandula, had been crossing the street and was hit and killed by a Seattle police officer going 74 and 25. What's more, dash cam footage caught the vice president of the Seattle Police Union joking and laughing about the incident, saying Kandula had, quote, limited value. It seems this department still has a lot more work to do. Surprise many of you to learn that, as far as Uncle Sam is concerned, the Duwamish are not indigenous. Oh, to be sure, the government recognizes that a people called Duwamish once did exist, but as far as they're concerned, those people all either moved on to the Tulalip, Lummi, Snoqualmie, Muckleshoot, or Suquamish reservations, or ceased to exist. In the eyes of the federal government, the people who claim Duwamish lineage, who aren't affiliated with any of those tribes, are just regular old American citizens making up an indigenous ancestor. You see, the Duwamish tribe that's based in Seattle today is not federally recognized. This means they get no access to federal programs or funds, no ability to put land into trust status, no recognition or ability to exercise protected treaty rights, and, as described, no acknowledgement of indigenous heritage. But it didn't used to be this way. Cecile Hansen, chair of the Duwamish tribe, enumerated the many ways that the government has acknowledged Duwamish tribal existence over the years. From 1860 to 1924, Congress passed almost 60 statutes denominating the Duwamish and other allied tribes in Washington, and appropriated funds for the Duwamish tribe and other treaty tribes. In 1925, we established one of the first tribal constitutions in Washington. In 1957, the Indian Claims Commission recognized the Duwamish tribe as an identifiable tribe of American Indians, finding that we were entitled to a $62,000 judgment for lost ancestral lands comprising present-day Seattle. Department of Interior records between the 1950s and 1970s repeatedly recognized the Duwamish tribe as the signatory to the 1855 Treaty of Vandalia. Up to the 1970s, the only thing that separated the Duwamish from their other tribal neighbors was their lack of a reservation. So how did this history of federal acknowledgement turn into a lack of federal recognition? You see, the federal government maintains a list of federally recognized tribes and has done so for over a century. However, an official procedure for getting on that list wasn't codified by the BIA until 1978. Before then, it was a confusing and not universally applied mix of acts of Congress or executive orders that got one on the list. And it wasn't uncommon for clerical errors to mistakenly remove tribes off the list who had been on there previously. What's more, before 1978, the list was more a list of tribes receiving federal benefits than those that were federally recognized. As the BIA was pretty strict about administering tribal benefits through reservation agencies, this left tribes like the Duwamish without a reservation in a legal gray area. All that is to say, by the 1970s, the Duwamish were nowhere to be found on the list. Now, there are many things flawed with the process for federal recognition that I'll get into more later in a separate video. But suffice it to say, it's a long, expensive procedure that seems more designed to disenroll as many tribes as possible in a genocide by bureaucracy. Despite these challenges, however, the Duwamish applied for formal federal recognition sometime in the 1970s. I've seen sources alternatively say 1975, 1977, or In 1979, a ruling was made in the ongoing U.S. v. Washington case that would have major implications for the Duwamish fight for recognition. If you see my Fish Wars video, you know what I'm talking about. Judge Bolt ruled that the Duwamish did not meet the requirements for federal recognition because of a 10-year break in leadership between 1916 to 1925. One of the requirements is demonstrating continuous political organization since 1900. This was the time immediately after the completion of the Lake Washington Ship Canal and the destruction of the Black River, where many Duwamish had still been living. In the chaos of having to move from their Black River homes and reorganize, a clear public record of their community had been lost. The recognition process took several decades to fulfill, so an official ruling from the BIA did not come down until 1996. But they denied the Duwamish's request on the same grounds as Judge Bolt's 1979 ruling. The Duwamish appealed the decision, piecing together the missing years through genealogical research. They argued that what seemed like a break in organization was simply a transition from one generation of leadership to the next in a continually identifiable Duwamish community. This time they prevailed. On the very last day of the Clinton administration, Cecile Hansen received a call from the BIA saying that the Duwamish had been recognized. Less than a week later, the decision was repealed by the incoming Republican administration of George Bush. The Duwamish were stunned and organized a massive public campaign to appeal the decision. Here's a quote from Cole Thrush about what came next. After a series of inquiries into criminal wrongdoing in the Bureau of Indian Affairs during both the Clinton and Bush administrations, the issue came down to technicalities: when a particular set of papers was signed and whether those papers were drafts or final copies. The decision was reaffirmed again in 2002. Again, the Duwamish appealed and were denied again in 2015 on the same grounds as the original 1996 denial. After President Biden appointed the first Indigenous American Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland, in 2021, the Duwamish have once again resumed their appeal. If you want to lend your support to the tribe's fight for recognition, you can visit DuwamishTribe.org, link on screen in the description, where you can sign a petition that's being sent to Congress and the Interior Department. The tribe has not let this lack of federal recognition and benefits keep them from being active contributors to their Seattle homes. They continue to be a part of the fabric of the city, as they always have been. Several members are involved in the cleanup of the Duwamish River, which unfortunately is a Superfund site, and in 2009, after buying back their own land, the tribe opened the long-awaited Duwamish Longhouse and Cultural Center on West Marginal Way at the old town site of Basketry. The Longhouse is open to the public, has a museum, and often hosts events and exhibitions. You can find out more about visiting the Longhouse on the tribe's website. Indigenous people have played and are continuing to play a central role in Seattle's story. They helped the city get off the ground, gave the unique identity, and provided a model for what respectful intercultural coexistence can look like. Despite 150 years of efforts to exclude them from Seattle society, Indigenous people have continually fought for and asserted their right to a place in the city, and the Duwamish are still here. Seattle's past is a thoroughly Indigenous place, as is its foreseeable future. Thank you all for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. That one was really fun for me to make. Again, this video is part of Project Homecoming 2. If you want to check out the rest of the videos in the playlist, I've got a link in the description. A bunch of great stuff on there, so I suggest you go check it out. If you like this channel and want to support my work, please do subscribe, like, maybe leave a comment, all that stuff that's good for the algorithm. You can also join my Patreon, link in the description.